All right, hello everyone. I am Kim Elena Ionescu. I'm the Chief Sustainability and Knowledge Development Officer here at the Specialty Coffee Association. For those that have, since I started trying to launch this conversation 15 minutes ago, thank you, and I apologize. It's a little bit mortifying not to be able to figure out how to do this Instagram live. This isn't even the first time that I have done one of these. So I don't know why it has been so tricky, but we will do the best we can to get this started. I see Jonas, which is great. That was a challenge last time.
Oh, now it's on.
Hey, I restarted my phone. Maybe that was the magic trick that we needed.
Yeah, it's not easy to do a live in the middle of nowhere where I'm now.
Yeah. Well, thank you for being here with us, Jonas, and thank you to everyone who's joining us online here. Since we're running a little bit late, I'll keep the introduction short. But just wanted to let everyone know who is joining us that we're having this conversation with Jonas Ferraresso today, who's a coffee agronomist living and working in Brazil, among other roles and interests that he has in coffee. We had a conversation a few months ago. Well, the SCA did. It was my colleague Jonas. Immediately after a really large scale frost hit Brazil, and there was a lot of conversation happening in the coffee industry, a lot of questions about the potential impacts. And at that point, everything was very new, and there were a lot of questions that remained unanswered. So this conversation is a chance to follow up on some of the same topics with a few months of distance, and just kind of get a sense from your perspective, Jonas. I don't expect you to speak for the entire country of Brazil, but from what you're seeing and from the farmers that you work with, how things are, what the rest of the coffee industry and coffee communities all over the world should be thinking about, and maybe even should be doing. But before that, for anyone maybe who hasn't seen the other Instagram live conversation or hasn't read any of your writing, would you just give us a little bit of background on yourself and how long you've been working in coffee in Brazil?
Yeah, my name is Jonas Ferraresso. I'm a coffee agronomist. I work with coffee farmers in Brazil for 9 years now, but I'm a farmer too for a whole life. I'm the fourth generation in the coffee field. I work with specialty, organic, and regenerative agriculture with small, medium, and in farms that are not mechanized. Today, by the way, I'm in a farm on one of my clients is Congonhas farm in Brazil, a coffee farm. And every for the ones that I evaluate the fields about every month to check how the coffee trees are behaving after the frost and the drought that we had. That's why I'm in a farm today.
Great. Well, thank you for making these efforts to join us even from the middle of a coffee field. Um, so for some people in this conversation, it won't be news, but for others, they might not be aware of the extent of the climatic events that Brazil has seen this past year, and how this year has been different from other years. So can you give us a little bit of a sense of how 2021 has been different?
Yeah, it is a challenge. It was a year very complicated for farmers. We had a problem during the blossom season last year because for the ones that don't know how the coffee physiology works in Brazil, because in each country is a little bit different because of the location. But in Brazil, usually we have a blossom season that we have flowers which happens like about one month ago. And these flowers will be our harvest in the next season, in the next year, in 2022. So our season that we harvest these years start last year in 2020. So in 2020, we have a problem with the drought already that bring a lot of harm to the coffee trees. So that's why the season that we harvest now in 2021 was not so great. And during the season, we have a frost in June and
Hmm.
in July,
Yes.
and then we have a drought again during the flower season again for the next year's harvest. And this affects the plants so much, the coffee trees, because the tree, like when we talk about perennial crops like coffee, there are some ways that the plants save energy when the climate and the situation are fine. So in order to, in the future, if they need it, they could spend that energy for some purpose like to control temperature or to blossom or bear fruit. If the plant have a lot of stress, all this savings of energy was is spent. So that's why now the plant was very stressed during the flower season. Uh, so the expectations for the next year that the agronomists are thinking about a good season to 2022. Now they are kind of frustrated because we saw in fields, it's trees which a lot of with a lot of leaves, because the plant when are stressed too, when the rains come, for example, the plant starts to sprout to bring back some leaves in order to capture sun, do photosynthesis and save energy again. So the plants, let me say, are not too worried about beer fruits, but to recover from the damage. So we saw plants with a lot of vigor, a lot of leaves in the fields, but when we check the branches, we saw just some berries in some areas, in some places of the plant, in areas where the coffee had a bigger stress, in areas that the frost was bigger than others. Some trees even not have had blossom this year. They are just sprouting leaves and waiting for better conditions.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks for that overview and also for some of the additional context around plant physiology. I think that's really useful for people who
Mm,
don't have the experience on coffee farms and haven't seen all of this firsthand.
mhm.
Because Brazil is such a big country and such a big producer of coffee. I know, at least for me, I've seen a lot of news about this frost and about the drought and the impacts out of in a macro sense. But I'd be really curious to know, since you are doing work with farms of these different sizes and in different regions, um, what some of the experiences have been of the producers you work with and the impact. But also, I'd love to know, what you're seeing because Brazil doesn't just produce coffee. Of course, there's a lot of coffee consumption that happens there too. How are these events? What are the impacts on the whole sort of specialty coffee value chain that you've seen?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I saw a quite different situation in each farm because, like you said, Brazil is a huge country, so we have a huge diversity of areas. For example, my small farmer have 700 trees, just 700 trees, and the biggest farm that I am work as advisor have 300,000 trees. So it's a very different world and technology, and they could be close. They are not so far away. They about 1 hour, but this is kind of how Brazilian coffee farming is. So in some areas, like small farmers are lost everything because 700 trees is all that they have. If they have a climate event, they lost everything. So it's quite hard to recover. Um, but in some areas, in high altitude areas, we had better conditions, and the frost impacted more the lower areas in Brazil
Hmm.
because it's usually how the frost works. The problem is now in Brazil about this um, problem about the farmers is investment because we have an inflation movement that's happened worldwide, not only in Brazil, I know.
Yeah.
We have the problem of the valuation of the currencies worldwide too, and Brazil is not different. So the dollar prices are higher. Um, so if the farmers need like fertilizers, or some kind of inputs like herbicides, fungicides. The price is all in dollars,
Hmm.
so it's higher too. And then finally, the sea market prices are not bad, but the price of the inputs are 3 times, 4 times more expensive. So farmers, it's interesting because farmers are receiving good prices for the coffee beans, but they are still worried because they need to buy stuff 4 times more expensive. And as Brazil, a big drinker of coffee, the coffee starts to raise in the market shelves, like the roasted and grounded. The last statistics from the Brazilian Association of Coffee Industry said that the prices it's about 40% higher than usual, and the consumption is decreased 14%. So people start to stop to buy as much coffee they used to buy, because the Brazil it's a diverse, they have a diverse variety of drinkers. So there are people that are willing to pay higher prices for their beans, and people that do not have conditions, but they love to drink coffee, so they have to buy sometimes a cheaper one. So these people that are more exposed to these prices conditions is the one that are having now problem for to have
Yeah.
2 pounds in the market shelf in Brazilian currency. For specialties, about, let me say, in average, 40 to 50 reais for a good quality coffee, not a top quality, but a good one. Now the regular coffee are costing like 30 to 40 reais,
Yeah.
which usually cost about 10 to 15 reais. So we have a good inflation that's still rising, and some economists in Brazil are worried to how we customers will be willing to pay, how far they willing to go to drink coffee, because they have more important things to buy like food and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So we will see a new era of understanding if the coffee is a product that are not so people do not change the mind or change the way they are consumption, or change to some kind of tea. It's something that we will understand along the next year.
Yeah. There was a lot in that answer that you just gave. I think you gave the answer to about three questions that I hadn't yet gotten to, and so I want to unpack that a little bit. Also, for people who are
Okay.
just joining us, to note that this is Jonas Ferraresso, who's a coffee agronomist in Brazil that we are talking to right now about the impacts of different climatic events, both at the farm level and then also impacts along the rest of the value chain. And I'm really glad that you brought up the commodities future price because that has been higher in recent months. And I think that on a superficial level, the conclusion someone might draw would be that that's good for farmers, but you
Mm-hmm.
also note all of these other factors about the cost of inputs, about fertilizers, about the consequences of those higher prices to demand at the retail level when
Mm-hmm.
inflation is going up and currency devaluation is a contributing factor, and how it's just never as simple as higher prices
Mm-hmm.
are great for farmers, and now the rest of
Mm-hmm.
us don't have to worry about that group anymore. So I'm glad that you said that, and I wanted to try to incorporate a question that I saw come in from someone in the audience about the support that producers are getting from different organizations now, and ask you, including that question, but more broadly, what does recovery look like from something like the climate that you all have had this past year, from the drought, from the frost? What will be required in order for coffee production to recover?
Yeah, the coffee, it's after this terrible climate events that we had, the plants are like recovering well, but farmers are very worried because they understand now better than before that the climate is so unstable. So if the plants are going well now, it's because we have plenty of rains in the last 30 days. So the plant have conditions to sprout and to grow well. But the farmers, I saw that because in the last, let me say, after the frost, many farmers start to looking for me to start to grow coffee under using the agroforest system under trees, because this is one way to avoid frost, because they are not rely more in things like, okay, we just have a frost in 30 to 30 years or 40 to 40 years. They are seeing that climate events are unexpected. There's no this kind of stuff. They are realizing that. So they are kind of looking for better solutions that could work in Brazil, and they still have the profit because it's very important. I like to say that because sometimes people ask me around the world why we not grow coffee under shade in Brazil, and I always have to explain that each country have a different situation, including what kind of genetics they are studying and what kind of resources and technologies they use to grow coffee. So in Brazil, our technology is go grow coffee with sun exposed. All our technology, genetics is about that. But now I saw people thinking more, maybe there's a possibility that we need to start to understand better how to grow shaded coffee in order to have some yields. Even we Brazil have a good, excellent yield in average, but we need to start to find new solutions. It's kind of good because farmers are more aware what they need to go, and they saw even now that the sea market prices, if they are good, that maybe means nothing, because there are a lot of stuff that they are worried beyond just the sea market prices to take their decisions, which usually is something that if I do a bad decision today, take me 20 years to I have to keep that decision, because coffee is a perennial crop. So everything needs to be made very well in order to have a sustainable field for a long time.
Yeah, so I hear you saying that decisions like this are no, not ones that coffee growers can take lightly, that,
Mm-hmm.
there is a need for support, and maybe a sharing of the risk involved in those decisions. Um, and also at the same time that years like this one are enough to make people consider growing coffee in a way that might be really different
Mm-hmm.
to what they've done for their whole coffee producing careers. Is that
Mm-hmm.
does that feel accurate? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, I think that our Instagram lives tend to keep these shorter than say a webinar, given that people kind of join us and then drop out. So I have one last question that you can answer in as many different ways as you'd like to. But I wonder, speaking again from your vantage point and thinking about the people that you're working with. And then thinking about this global audience, I've seen a lot of different countries pop up in the chat, especially as people were joining and kind of announcing where they were tuning in from. You know, is there anything that you would like the audience to know about coffee in Brazil right now, about what you sort of see on the horizon, things that people should be doing that they might not know because they're not in Brazil on a coffee farm like you are?
Yeah, I think one thing that we have to all the coffee drinkers I always said to all the people that I talked, it's be responsible when you drink your coffee in order to just know a little bit more about where the roaster are buying their coffee, if it's sustainable, if they are carrying more than just the roasted beans on the grinder. And about the Brazilian situation, I'm still evaluating the farmers that I travel to. I work with about 15 farmers now in two different states, São Paulo and Minas Gerais. Uh, but what I saw sometimes that's kind of make me sad about that, it's some traders that are not giving the right perspective or giving the perspective or forecast so how can I say that with oh my gosh without the data that we still need to collect to understand better where how bad was the damage that we have on frost and drought and give the right perspective in numbers. I don't like
Yeah.
always to give so much about talk about numbers because every day we have a different challenge in the fields, but we understand in Brazil one thing that the season 2022 will be not as great as we are expecting, but there's still a few variables that we'll need to collect, understand, and maybe in January we have a good number to talk about if we have enough coffee for everyone in 2022.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a good reminder to I was saying earlier to be aware of the sort of simple solutions around the commodity futures market price, but I think that's also true. There's a desire for certainty, and sometimes numbers
Mm-hmm.
and predictions can give us that feeling of certainty, but it sounds like there's
Mm-hmm.
still work that remains to be done to really understand what the extent of the impact will be, and then
Mm-hmm.
adapt or react to that accordingly at the time. So people should stay
Mm-hmm.
tuned, I guess. And if they want
Mm-hmm.
to follow you, read more of your writing, here on Instagram, you're Jonas underscore agronomist or Jonas agronomist, all one
Yeah.
word.
Yeah, Jonas Coffee Agronomist.
Jonas coffee agronomist. And then you're on LinkedIn
Yeah.
also. Anywhere else people should look
Mm-hmm.
for your work?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. All the I write articles usually about Brazil and Brazilian situation. If someone read it and want to ask me something, I'm always happy to answer everyone.
Okay. Well, thank you, Jonas, for being here with us today, for sharing your perspective, and also for your patience as we figured out this Instagram Live thing. Hope it's a smoother
No problem.
conversation next time, but it was great to talk to you.
It was great to talk to you and bring some fresh perspectives to the audience too.
Yeah. All right. Well, be well. Thank you,
Okay, bye
everyone.
bye.
Bye.